is insulin produced exclusively in response to carbohydrates, glucose that we intake through food, or also because of other external factors like stress?
So it is certainly connected to stress, but through the same mechanism. So stress, if you have like a endocrine response to stress, so something stressful happens in your life, your HPA axis, which is a primary endocrine axis in your body, then releases like glucocorticoids, cortisol, for example, from your adrenal glands. Mm-hmm. So your normal stress response would be to release cortisol. That is going to stimulate the liver to release glucose.
Got it.
And then insulin will follow. Okay. And that is a adaptive response as part of your sympathetic nervous system response. So if you were to encounter a stressful situation within nature, as we used to 10,000, 20,000 years ago, you would want exactly that response. You'd want stress, you'd want cortisol, you want glucose shooting out to your muscles because you need to run, you need to fight or flight, right? So that is a normal adaptive response. The problem is that we live within a time of chronic stress. So with many people, we have this HPA axis always stimulated. We have cortisol always being released. And then subsequently, then we have the release of glucose. And then, of course, in response to glucose, the pancreas is like, we need more insulin. And so we get into a state of chronic high insulin. It's called hyperinsulinemia. And
that can be just really stress related, not even if you have like a fantastic low glycemic diet, but you're chronically stressed, you could have. Can I tell my story?
Sure.
So, Jeff's been wearing this continuous glucose monitor now for a year and a half, which has been probably the most transformational gadget that you've put on, and the continuous glucose monitor monitors your glucose levels and tells you when you're spiking, whether you're low, whether you're high. This is how you found out that you were pre-diabetic. Shocking to both of us. And so then I finally slapped one on last winter, and I figured I was probably fine, but maybe I was tofu. So I put one on. I figured I would just do it for 2 to 4 weeks, unless, of course, I found out some sort of unpleasant numbers, and put it on. It took a day or two to kind of calibrate. First, it seemed like it was high, but you said, don't worry about it. It just takes a couple of days to kind of get used to your body, or your body to it. And then I was very regular, sort of in range, as I guess one would say. And I definitely noticed my diet maybe wasn't as good as I thought it was, because I for sure ate and drank things that spiked me in not the best ways, but it was clear that if I wanted to be healthier, I could, and that my baseline glucose levels, my fasting glucose levels, were solid. And then about 10 days in, and I was down at around 80, which I guess is a pretty solid resting glucose. And then I'll go up to 140, 150 if I, had big two cupcakes or something. And that was it. And then I was monitoring it, but I wasn't really, it wasn't that interesting to me anymore. And then my dad had that huge, very major health crisis. And I was monitoring, but I wasn't really paying attention because I was so consumed with going up to visit him and, hospital, and it was very dramatic. And then I looked back on my glucose levels after, at that point, and I was up in like the 200s pretty much, but across the board all day long with a few little dips. And I was just like, that's incredible. I mean, we hear all the time that stress is the killer. It's this, we all sort of get it, but to actually see that was so it was so eye-opening. And okay, yeah, that's fine. It was a crisis point, and I have enough. I have enough metabolic fitness to withstand a couple weeks of like crazy spikes. But for people who are chronically stressed, or whatever, there's so many ways to be stressed, environmentally stressed for your situation. Obviously, I was like, well, that is just, it's so interesting to really look under the hood and see those numbers. And our daughter had a similar experience just in this last month. Summertime, low, went to school, first day at school, 200,
So let me give you the headline there. Stress management is weight management. And let me then now write the article in a relatively Newtonian way, because, we want to kind of show sort of how these things happen by analogy with billiard balls. I hit the cue ball, then the cue ball hits the 2 ball that hits the 4 ball that hits the 8 ball in the corner pocket. That's just the way humans generally explain things. So I'll try to explain it that way, but knowing that there's a lot of other factors happening everywhere all at once. So you get stressed, you release stress hormones. Stress hormones release glucose. Glucose stimulates the release of insulin. Over time in the body, and this is just a general rule, that the excess of any one molecule will cause a resistance to itself. So over time, elevated levels of insulin will cause a resistance to insulin. So when cells are no longer sensitive to insulin and they're not taking glucose in for the production of energy, it is storing then that glucose as fat, as triglycerides generally in adipocytes, fat cells. So there you have your chain link fence of why stress causes weight gain.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this interview from the Commune podcast, then click subscribe and check out this video right here.